All right, sound check, sound check. Can anyone confirm if you're hearing me clearly? Okay, so in a few minutes, Miss Sheena Yap Chan will be joining us for podcast revolution. Why use podcasts to create your personal brand? So actually, this is also my first time to get to know more about podcasts. So I've been doing YouTube YouTube things, no, YouTube videos for a few years now, but never seriously up to now. And hoping I can add up podcasting as well to what we are doing. Okay. So once more in a few minutes, Miss Sheena Yap Chan will be joining us. Okay. So and in addition, if you're interested in Adobe softwares, we're inviting you to join us to join our friends in Mechani Web. And if you're into digital arts and creativity, inviting you to join us in Digital Creatives Philippines. If you're a software user, if you're interested in architecture, engineering, construction, building information modeling, manufacturing, media, and entertainment, inviting you to join us in Autodesk Community Philippines. And lastly, if you're into building information modeling, inviting you to join us in BIM Philippines. In addition, again, we are also live. Not only in LinkedIn, we are also live in YouTube and in Facebook. And helping me out or joining me this evening is one of our strongest supporter. Good evening, Sir John Paul Titik.
Good evening, Sir John Mark. Ayan. It's been it's an honor to be here again, co-hosting for another great topic. Ayan. And I'm really excited to learn more about podcasting because this is another field that I haven't explored in I think so long. I've been hearing people doing podcasts and everything. I've been listening to podcasts and this is my first time to get information about this platform. So I'm really excited.
Hello, hello.
Mhm.
Ayan, is everyone hearing us clearly? I'm hearing parang echo from
Mhm.
user John Paul.
Hmm. Echo.
Or because we are near to each other.
I guess so.
Oo. Hello, can anyone confirm if you are hearing us clearly?
Janet Kahukom is saying she can hear us clearly.
Oo. Uh, Sir Raymond, are you hearing us clearly? Good evening, Sir Mark Lester, Baluran, Ma'am Jeanette. Good evening po. Ayan, just want to check if you are hearing me clearly and can you say something, Sir John Paul, just to confirm if we're hearing another echo again.
Hello, hello. Loud and clear?
All right. Okay. Ayan. And before we begin, I would like to thank everyone who attended InDesign a while ago. So a while ago, we were in another live stream. It's Adobe's InDesign. Okay, I'm about to add our guest now, Ma'am Sheena. I'm seeing in three, two, and one.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. It's morning here in Canada.
Ayan. First question. Marunong ba daw kayong magtagalog?
No, sorry po. Only
No.
like very little. I'm actually more fluent in Bisaya.
Ah.
Yeah.
We will be having a slight problem because of that. Joking.
It's okay. We
It's
prepared
okay.
tissue. There.
Sorry, guys.
We're in Visayas region.
I was born in Cebu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my mom is also a Cebuana.
Oh,
She
nice.
was born in Mandaue
Oh, okay, nice.
under the clan of Rama. Okay, so Miss Sheena, are you going to share some slides or
Yeah, I have
something?
a presentation that I created, so I'm not sure I've never used this before. So well, I see the share screen button here. So do you just want me to start or?
Yeah, you can share, but we have the ability to select what our audience will view for now. So
Oh,
just in preparation.
okay.
So when did you migrated or moved to Canada from the Philippines?
Well, my family moved here when I was 7, but we went back to Cebu when I was 13 because my Lolo was sick at the time. So I went to high school there for three years, and then I came back here again because my Lolo passed away that time, and my parents wanted to come back here.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of reminded of Rob Balasabas right now because that guy is into YouTube. I think he's one of the social media manager of I forgot that plug-in for YouTube. He's also based in Canada from the Philippines.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
not sure if you've heard about Rob Balasabas.
No, I've never heard of him.
He's also one of the few Filipinos who has access for LinkedIn Live.
Oh, nice.
Rob. Anyways, please share your screen and this really is an interesting topic because YouTube is very hot in the Philippines right now. And initially, what I think about podcasting is for the for the old people because it's like a radio, right? So I'm sure I am having this wrong interpretation about what podcasting is. How about you, Sir John Paul? Any thoughts on podcasting? Have you done this before?
I think I've been doing podcasting before during my Facebook live. The only thing is, um, what I've heard about podcasting is you just have a topic and then you go freestyle. You have a guest, you just have a topic and then you go freestyle. So it's a great way to share your ideas. And right now, I'm really interested in hearing Ma'am Sheena's on how to do this. I mean, ma'am, this would be a great opportunity to teach both of us, John Mark and me, on how to do podcasting.
Cool. Well, just let me know and I'll start whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah, let's start, ma'am.
Okay, let me just share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, cool. So let me just present it. So All right. Thanks everyone for coming today to learn about podcasting. And today's topic, we're going to talk about podcast revolution, why use podcasts to create your personal brand. Personally, I love podcasting because it's just a great way to get your information out there. For me, it's the greatest form of self-expression because you really get to talk about, whatever you want, whether it's like a hobby or business or something personal. It really does give you that freedom to do what you want to, well, like the freedom to talk about what you want. So a little bit about me. My name is Sheena Yap Chan, and my podcast is called the Tao of Self Confidence, where I interview Asian women about their journey to self confidence. And the reasons why I created this podcast was because as Asian women, we really don't have a lot of support system when it comes to dealing with self-confidence. I mean, even in the Philippines alone, the beauty standards in the Philippines is so unattainable, right? It's like you need to have pearly white skin to be known as beautiful. And there's like whitening creams, like billboards of whitening creams all over EDSA, right? So we have to like really find a support system to show others like, you're beautiful just the way you are. It doesn't matter if you're light skin or dark skin, you're beautiful in your own skin. And another reason why I created this podcast was because, I also wanted to create a stronger representation of Asian women. As Asian women, a lot of people think we're quiet and submissive, but really, there's so many women I've interviewed who've done such amazing things. And I'll share some of the guests that I've interviewed, in my podcast. But this is just a little bit about me and my podcast. It's been around for about 5 years. I recently just hit 1 million downloads since I've created it, which is something I never thought would be possible. So yeah, I mean, like you just never know what happens when you start a podcast. Like when I first started, I had no clue what it was. I've always seen it on like iTunes, but I never really knew what it was. So we'll just cover some of the topics for today. So this is what I'll be talking about. What is a podcast? For anyone who doesn't know what a podcast is, don't worry because I didn't know either when I first started. The benefits of podcasting, some stats on podcasting, the trends in podcasting, why use podcasts to create your personal branding, how to get eyeballs to your show, and some examples of where podcasting can take you. And then at the end, if there's time, we'll have some Q&A. So first and foremost, what is a podcast? So a podcast is another form of blogging using a series of audio or video files that can be played through any portable digital device, such as laptops, cell phones, tablets. Even cars now have a system where you can just play podcasts straight from your car. I mean, the cars right now has like so much technology, it's amazing. Once a person subscribes to your podcast, he or she gets notified automatically when an episode is released and ready for download. So it's through your RSS feed, and usually you have to invest in a podcast hosting to get that feed and to have it sent to all the podcast directories like Apple and Spotify, and even now Amazon is getting into podcasts. Also, podcast allows you to listen to the information you want to hear whenever and wherever you want. So that's what a podcast is. Some benefits of podcasting. The first and foremost, podcasting is very cost effective to start one. I mean, the most important tool you need is a mic, right? So that your voice can come out. And there's like free tools that you can use to edit your podcast. You can use Zoom to record your podcast. It's very cost effective when you have no budget at the moment. Podcasting makes it easy for your audience to consume content. Like I mentioned, people can just subscribe and download the episodes and they can listen to it at any time. Or, a lot of us like to listen to stuff when we're doing something, whether it's doing work or doing house chores or we're stuck in traffic. A lot of people just like to listen to podcasts while they're doing things like that. Podcasting makes it time efficient for audience to listen. Like I mentioned, they can listen to it during traffic jams or workout sessions. You can listen to podcasts offline by downloading episodes, which is great, especially in the Philippines, right? Because I know sometimes internet connection in the Philippines is not always the greatest. So it's really great that you can just download these episodes and just listen to them when your internet isn't the fastest. Podcasts are portable, which means you can listen to them anywhere as long as you have a mobile device or a tablet. Podcasting is also a great source of traffic generation. So if you want more people to come to your website or come to your offer or service, podcast is a great way to promote that. Now, these are some stats that I found on the internet about podcasting. Most of them are stats based on the US. I've found one stat that's based in the Philippines. So First and foremost, as of this month, October 2020, there are 1 million active podcasts and over 29 million episodes. So some people might think that's a lot, but actually that's not a lot. That's very little. Considering YouTube has over 31 million channels, and as of last year, there's over like 500 million blogs, just like regular blogs. So podcasting is still very, very underutilized. To think that there's only 1 million active podcasts is very little compared to like YouTube and blogs. This is the only stat that I found out about the Philippines. There are about 31 million Filipinos listening to podcasts. So that's a pretty huge number, right? Considering podcast isn't even really that big in the Philippines yet. So this is a great time to start one. The rest is pretty much based in the US. 51% listeners are male, while 49% listeners are women. 81% of podcast listeners pay attention to podcast ads. 16 million people in the US are avid podcast fans. 90%.
Avid.
Yeah, avid.
Oh, man.
Yeah. 90% of podcast listening is done at home. 60% of podcast listeners have bought something from a podcast ad. And this is a pretty cool stat that I found. On average, 45% of podcast listeners have an annual household income of more than $250,000. That's in US.
Mm.
So, that's like what, 1 million pesos, or a little over 1 million pesos. And yeah. So 72% of people who have listened to a podcast for 4 or more years have made a purchase. So those are some of the stats that I found that are pretty interesting when it comes to podcasts. Now, some trends. These are pretty cool trends. So if you don't have a podcast, maybe this is the time to start thinking, like, what kind of podcast do you want? Like, what type of topics you want to talk about? So the top 5 most popular podcast genres are society and culture, business, comedy, news and politics, and health. Smartphones are the #1 medium to listen to podcasts. This is pretty cool. US ad revenue is expected to exceed $1 billion by 2021. So that's just in the US alone. That's not even like, in other countries. Brands have a higher ad spend now for podcast content. So some companies have actually doubled their ad spend for just for podcast content. 80% of podcast listeners will listen to an entire podcast or most of it. So this is another interesting one, especially if you are, into live streaming and doing live videos, especially now we're in the pandemic. Like, a lot of people have been doing live virtual events. Live streaming is going to be a $70.5 billion industry by the year 2021. And so podcast live streaming events alone last year raked in $55 million. So that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. Competition is still very low, like I mentioned. There's only 1 million active podcasts, but there's like 500 blogs out there, 500 million blogs, and like 31 million YouTube channels. So, like, in comparison, it's like super low. Competition between podcasting platforms will increase, which is true because it started with Apple, and then Spotify is doing their best to get the podcasting market, and now Amazon has started also releasing podcasts on their platform through Amazon Music. Even IMDb, you can list your podcast on it. So all these big companies are finding ways to get that podcast market because they realize the trend is going up and more people are listening to it. So, these are some of the trends that are happening in podcasting. And also the listener base is going global. This I thought was really interesting because, because a lot of people think most podcasts are in English, but there are so many podcasts now that are non-English language. And in China alone, they have their own like podcast network or podcast platform. It's called Himalaya.fm, and they have 500 million users just from that one platform. So these are some pretty cool trends that are happening right now in podcasting. And so why use podcasts to create your personal branding? So I have 8 reasons as to why. The first one, you become an authority figure in your industry. When you just provide valuable content and just share, some of the information that you found or, interviewing experts, you become that authority figure. So it's a great way to build that authority figure if you want to be an expert in your industry. It's a great way to increase your online presence. This is very true. Ever since I've started my podcast, I've had, people ask me to be featured in articles, featured in interviews, like sky's the limit. It's just like when they hear your voice, they hear what you offer, they love it, and they're just gonna, come to you and ask to like be interviewed or just, write a piece of something. So it's a great way to a great way to increase your online presence. It's also a great way to build an intimate relationship with your audience because you're just putting yourself out there. Like there's no filter, no boundaries. Like you can just go out there and be your true self. And when people can relate to what you have, like it just wants them to keep on coming back, and they get to know everything about you through your show. One of the biggest like celebrities in the world is like BTS, right? Why are they so popular? Because they just put themselves out there. They're just kooky, they're funny, they get mad, they cry, they laugh, but people like that because they're just being themselves and it really creates that intimate relationship. So podcasting is a great way to do
My
that.
sister is a fan of BTS, and
Pardon?
I think I have an overdose of it every day.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I'm
I
Harvey.
can relate to what you're saying that they're
I love
putting up
BTS.
their true selves. That's
Pardon?
true.
Yeah, they are.
They're putting up their true selves in their YouTube videos. I haven't heard any podcast, and it's really different from them being on stage and doing concerts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with this number 3.
Yeah. So, I mean, podcast is a great way to do that, especially for people who are afraid of doing video. Podcast is a great way to build your confidence. I mean, to build your relationship without showing your face. Your audience will know, like, and trust you better because they just consistently hear your voice. Like, radio stations, we trust them because we hear their voices every day, especially when you're like stuck in traffic in Manila for like 3 hours. What do? You turn on the radio, right? And it's the same thing with podcasts. It's like when they constantly hear your voice, they get to know, like, and trust you more, right? And yeah, it takes time sometimes to build, right? Because especially when you're starting with nothing, you got to start from 0 or 1, and like you just build it, keep on building it consistently. But they'll get to know and like and trust you more because of what you have to offer, because of the valuable content, because you're just showing your true selves. It also helps you build a network of influencers. I always say podcasting is a great way to connect with people who have a bigger influence than you. I've interviewed so many like amazing women. I'll share some of them later on in this presentation, but don't be afraid to just like go out there and connect with someone who you really, really want to like interview. The worst they could say is no, right? But what if they say yes? Like, wouldn't that be awesome? So I know sometimes it's scary because they're like, sometimes you put them on a pedestal and you think they're like, oh my God, they're like so much better than me, but really they're just a person in the end, right? And I'll show you how you can actually like connect with, influencers to get them on interviews. You become the go-to person because you're solving your audience's pain or problem. So an example of this was I was featured in an article here in Canada about, building confidence in the workplace. And so one of the women who I previously interviewed worked for that company and just messaged me asking if I can do this article because she just remembers me as the one talking about confidence. And so, when you just constantly talk about that one topic that you have, you become that go-to person. And, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have my podcast. 7, it's an easy way to deliver valuable content to your audience. I mean, all they have to do is subscribe to your podcast. And once you deliver a new episode, they get notified right away. So we have to like think as a listener, how can they get my content? What's the easiest way to get that? Podcasting is a great way because once they subscribe, they get their content immediately. You don't have to notify them yourself that there's a new episode. The podcast directories does that for you, and they can download it and listen to it at any given moment, right? They can listen to it 100 times. They can listen to it while they're cooking or giving their kids a shower. I was watching another BTS video and they're like, one question was like, how do you connect with your audience so well, even though you're speaking Korean and you have a big English audience? And they just said, because of the way they deliver their content, they make it easy and available for everyone to consume it. So you got to think, what's a great platform for my audience to, consume information, valuable information, so that they'll keep coming back. So this is why podcast is a great one. And then 8, podcast audiences are extremely loyal, and that's so true, right? When you just keep, pushing, like you keep, doing your show and keep talking about the topics that you love about most, or interview great guests, they'll keep coming back. I've had so many people message me saying how it's really helped them, how it's helped them build their confidence, how they started their own podcast, how they even decided to do public speaking. I've never it's just amazing when people just come to you and tell you oh, I've been a fan of your podcast for a year, and I just didn't even know, right? So it's just a great way to build an extremely loyal audience. And so those are some of the reasons why it's podcasting is a great platform to build a personal brand. So how do you get eyeballs to your show, right? So here are some tips that I'll share with you. The first one is lead with your message or purpose of the show. So especially when you start with nothing, people don't know who you are, right? This is why it's so important to create a strong message for your podcast so that you can lead with that. I've always led with my message all the time. I don't even tell them who I am. I just say, hey, I have a podcast where I interview Asian women about their journey to self-confidence, and I tell them why. And most of the people say yes. Of course, I get no's. It's life, right? We get rejection all the time, but we just keep moving forward. But if you keep, leading with your message or purpose with the show, the right people will come to you. So, before you start anything, pick up, sit down and think, why are you creating this podcast? What is the message of this podcast? Is it to, talk about your love for dogs? And that's fine, right? Is it you want to share tips for single moms? That's fine. Just make sure you just do that first before you even start a podcast, because once you have that strong message, everything else will be a lot easier to do. To interview people with influence on your show. Like I mentioned, podcasting is the greatest way to get people of influence to be on your show, right? Because now that podcast is a hot thing that people want to be on, they'll say yes most of the time, right? Of course you'll get no's, but when you just lead with your message and share with them why you want them on your podcast show, most of them will say yes, but of course you'll always get no's. So just remember that. 3, be a guest on other people's podcasts, right? If you want to promote your podcast, start getting on other people's shows, right? You can talk about why you created the podcast. You can talk about, some of the stories that you like. It's a great way to promote your podcast as well. 4, utilize social media. Social media is a great way to also get your message out there. LinkedIn is one of my favorite social media platforms to share my message, to share my podcast, especially, when I have people of influence, because some of the guests that I've interviewed have large followings on LinkedIn. So don't be afraid to use social media to get your podcast show out there. Celebrate your wins. So when I mean celebrate your wins, share, an accomplishment that you've had through your podcast, share it on social media, share it with your friends, because a lot of people like to follow your journey, right? From when you started to from episode 0 to episode 100, they want to see the progression, right? So I always celebrate every win that I have, right? Whether it's 10,000 downloads or 1 million downloads, I share that out, because then people are gonna see that and be like, oh, wow, I can't believe she already got that many downloads. I should check this show out. And, people will cheer for you and builds that engagement. So don't be afraid to share your wins out there. And it doesn't matter how big or small it is, just share it out, right? People just appreciate the fact that you're winning, right? I think as people, we're so afraid to celebrate our wins. We feel like if we don't make $1 million, we're not successful. But when you start celebrating every single win that you have, you're just going to attract more wins in your life. So don't be afraid to do that. 6, ask people to leave 5-star reviews on your show. So for some reason, I think Apple Podcasts, the algorithm that they use is based on how many reviews are on your show, right? I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what most people have been saying since the beginning. So even then, when people see the reviews anyways, they're going to be like, oh, I got to check this show out because there's so many great reviews on it. So my podcast, in the States alone, has almost 400 reviews. And that's actually considered not a lot, because there's some shows that have over 4,000 reviews.
Really?
Yeah. So mine is very little compared to some of them. But the more you have them, the better, right? You just have to, it takes time to build. So this is another way to get eyeballs to your show. 7, join podcast networks and/or groups, right? On Facebook, there's a lot of podcasting networks that you can join. They'll probably like ask you to swap 5-star reviews, ask to like do guest collaborations, like swap podcasts, like I'll be on your show if you can be on my show. You can share what your podcast is about. So these are actually a great way to get more eyeballs to your show and just, get feedback from your show too, right? Because like sometimes when you're doing this on your own and you don't know what to do, like you need feedback to say like from other podcasters to see if what you're doing is right or wrong. So this is another great way to get more eyeballs to your show. And the last but not the least, be consistent with self-promotion. I know we're very afraid to like promote ourselves out there. And yeah, I still get scared too, but like no one's going to know about your show if you don't share it out, right? If you personally don't share it out. Like if you're promoting something that's going to create a positive impact in the world, then you shouldn't be afraid to share it out. Just you have to be consistent with that. And I know sometimes, especially as women, like, it looks shameful that we're promoting ourselves out there, but we shouldn't be shameful about it, especially when it's creating positive change. So, just go out there and, be consistent with self-promotion, because if you're not going to do it, no one else is going to do it. It has to start with you. So this is, I think, probably the most important, because like for me, I share my episodes out all the time. I share my wins. I share, reviews. I share, women who message me. I share as much as I can, right? Sometimes I get lazy, I'm not gonna lie, but I picked myself back up and said, okay, let's do it again. So these are some of the tips that you can use to get more eyeballs to your show. Oh, so these are some examples of where podcasting can take you. Okay, remember, I started with like no downloads, not even a clue of what a podcast was, but like just putting in the work and just believing in yourself and taking action. You just never know where it can take you. So the first example is, I got featured on major publications. Like I was in the Manila Times. I was pretty shocked that I was in that because I didn't even know. One of the ladies that I interviewed asked if they could write about me, and I thought it was just on her blog, but I didn't realize she was a columnist for the Manila Times. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Another one is I got also featured in Marketing in Asia, which is another great website. And it was the same thing. I interviewed a lady on the show, and she also asked me if I could be featured on this platform. And then I was also featured on Mind Valley, which is a huge like educational like platform or website. So these are just all because of my podcast, like just connecting with people and knowing, like sharing my message out there, sharing about the show. You can get featured in major publications. I was also featured on Apple Podcasts. So in the month of May, they have Asian Heritage Month. And so Apple features like, Asian hosted podcasts, right? So if you see at the like bottom left, my show's there in red. So I got featured 2 years in a row, which is great. I'm not sure why they didn't do it this year, but the last 2 years I got featured in it. And then these are some of the other like Asian hosted podcasts that were featured in this month. And then you also get to connect with famous people. Like I mentioned, it's like the easiest way to connect with people of influence. I got to interview Cheska Kramer, which is one of the most followed families in the Philippines. And I also got to interview Miriam Kiambao, who was contestant for Miss Universe in the 90s. And honestly, I just, sent an email asking like if they can be interviewed on the show. And, I led with the message. And honestly, I didn't even know if they would say yes or no, but I was pretty surprised when they said yes. So it's just amazing, like what podcasting can, like where it can take you. And these are just 3 examples. Like there's way more, but these are like some of the things that I've achieved through my podcasts. And so in conclusion, now is a great time to start a podcast. Like it's very underutilized, and like I mentioned, there's only 1 million active podcasts as of this month, and there's way more room to grow. And with the predictions that they have, like it's just going to keep growing. So I hope this has helped you out. And how do I end the share screen? Sorry.
I can remove that for you.
Okay.
Do you have a final slide wherein you have a contact detail or something,
Oh, I totally
or
forgot
a
about
Yes.
that.
handle?
If
Self
you
promotion.
if you Google Sheena Yap Chan, I'm like the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet, so I'm not really hard to find. But maybe I'll send all the links later on.
Okay, okay.
So I think we have questions from our viewers.
Yeah, I'm sharing. I made a quick search in Google, and yeah,
Yeah.
really is true. Sheena Yap Chan, her
Yeah,
website, and
I'm
it's
the
here.
only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet. So so I hope everyone enjoyed that presentation and maybe it helped them realize, podcasting is a huge platform to, build your personal brand, your marketing, get your message out there. It's really great. So if anyone has any questions, yeah, feel free to ask them out.
I think I'll go to Sir Raymond Victorino. And his question is, for people who'd like to start a podcast, what's the usual range of investment?
Um, I think the biggest investment would be investing in a good mic. My mic cost me like $100 US or Canadian. No, $100 Canadian. And I've had this since the beginning. Because and you also need to invest in podcast hosting because that's what they use to send your feed to all the podcast directories like Apple, Amazon, Google Play. And so the one that I use costs about $12. Oh no, $15 US a month. And that's like the basic plan. I can send over a link to that later on if to show you what the podcast hosting I use. I'll send it through JMRC.
How much is that again?
It starts at $15 US. It's more
Monthly?
monthly, yeah. Um, that's
Mm.
pretty much the main investments. Other than that, I mean, you can use Zoom to record your interviews. There's free softwares to edit it, like Audacity. But the main ones is make sure you have a good mic because it's all about your voice and your sound, and you want it to appear like clear, confident, and like have that strong voice. And then the podcast hosting because that's the most important to send to the podcast directories. Oh.
Right.
Oh,
So
sorry. I thought you guys got disconnected. I was
just
like,
had some technical difficulties. I'd like to ask Ma'am Sheena, usually if you're going to start a podcast, for how long would be one episode?
it depends on how long you want it. I mean, for me, my episodes are very short because like the attention span of people is
Yeah.
not that high, right? And like it all depends on your topic that you want to do. For me, mine ranges from like 10 to 15 minutes. Just because the feedback I got is like short and impactful at the same time. And plus, everyone's busy doing stuff. But there's some people who have 2-hour shows. Like Joe Rogan has a huge podcast show, and he sometimes goes for like an hour or 2 hours long because people love his show. So it really just depends on how long you want to do it and what your content is about. Like this is your show, right? Like I mentioned, podcasting is a great platform of self-expression, and so you really have that freedom to choose how long you want it. It's all like testing it out. If an hour is too long, then to cut it into half an hour, right? Cut it into 2 parts. You have to figure out what works for you and what works for your audience.
Ayan. Me, how long did it took you to realize that there's really something here in podcasting?
I think it took me about a year. I went to a podcast conference in Chicago in 2016. And so one of the speakers was like a well-known movie star, and he was talking about how podcasting really like helped them heal in the process, and like it's just the greatest form of self-expression. And for me, self-expression is huge, just because we live in the world where it's all about filters, like Instagram filters, Snapchat filters, and it's just missing that authenticity. And so this is why I love podcasting. It's like I get to be me. I get to be who I am. I can share like what I'm scared of. I can share the things that I've gone through. I can share tips. I can share, other people's opinions and values and their stories. And that's how I realized, like, I really love podcasting because of that.
Okay, shout out to Miss Jeanette Kahukom. I was inspired by Sheena Yap Chan to get into podcasting. On her show, the Tao of I remember receiving letters from her and at the list my associates. From then on, it made me decide to do the same way, pay it forward, and help people increase their online presence
Oh,
as well.
thanks,
Well,
Jeanette.
thank you for joining us, Raymond Victorino as well. Thank you, sir. Sir JP.
And I guess after hearing Ma'am Sheena's uh, lecture on starting a podcast, I think I'm going to start my podcast myself.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be sure to make a shout out to Ma'am Sheena with that podcast. And I'm just, I think the one you said that you should set your topic straight. That's really,
Yeah.
really important. You should get
I-
your message that on your first episode, you should tell the people that, hey, I'm doing this podcast and this is my topic. So it gives your podcast somewhat an identity.
yeah, I
That
mean, you have to set the foundation,
if
right?
I'm
Like,
talking about empowering women, I'm going to Sheena Yap Chan, something like that.
yeah, I mean, like you have to set that foundation, and it just makes things a lot easier for you when you set it up and create it. Because when you start with not knowing what your podcast show is about, you're gonna run around and start like, questioning yourself if this is the right thing or not, or you're gonna like second guess if what you're doing is right or wrong. I mean, of course, we're gonna second guess ourselves because it's something new and it's something we've never done before. I went through it. I mean, it took me like I actually delayed it like 3 months because I was so scared if this show was even gonna be like good or not. I was afraid of my own voice. Like I didn't like hearing my own voice. I was afraid if people was gonna laugh at me. I was afraid if the show was gonna tank. But these are normal things that people go through when they start something new. And sometimes you just have to put yourself out there and just see what happens, right? Because you never know unless you try. And like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like you don't need to have the most perfect podcast. Even until now, my podcast isn't perfect, but you just need to get that content out there, the valuable content that will help someone who's listening to your podcast. And I never would have thought podcasting would like reach over 150 countries, right? Like I never knew people in Africa were listening to it. Like it's insane. This is why it creates like such a great online presence because it's really like on a global scale, right? Like so many countries can access it and can download it and listen to it at their own leisure, especially in countries where internet isn't like, something like it's a luxury for them, right? It's not something that's, basic. Like in Canada, everyone has internet, but maybe people in Africa, they don't have it as a basic, it's actually a luxury for them, right? It's expensive to get. So when they can just download it and then just listen to it offline, then it's great, right? We have to find ways for our audience to consume info that can be convenient for them. And so this is why podcasting is really great.
Yeah, now I just realized that people downloading sound files, that's really small bandwidth.
Yeah.
That's
especially
something that's
especially
another
audio files. I mean, downloading videos take a lot more like like bandwidth, but like downloading a 15-minute audio, it's very like quick, right? Maybe a minute or two. So
and when you do podcast, should there be a script? I think because I do vlogs, I do video production, and we always have this board that we follow, a script that we follow. But when you do podcast, should there be like a script that you should strictly follow?
So I have an outline that I send to my guests, and I've used the same outline from the very start. And so, like I mentioned, it's really up to you. You can use a script if you want. You can do freestyle if you want, because this is your show, and podcasting is there's no like real standard. Like you can just go out there and be who you are and just do what you want. You get to decide if you want to do a script or not, right? For me, I like sending my guests an outline because it helps them out, helps them write out their own story. And for some of them, it's their first time ever being on a podcast, so they get really scared. And so writing it out helps them like ease that fear.
Same here. I don't know if this is okay or not, but like what is currently happening right now, we don't have a script. Actually, we're a bit nervous if Miss Sheena is going to appear or not.
Of course,
So
I'll
yeah,
appear.
it's a freestyle. What's happening here is a freestyle as well.
So we have another question here. Yeah. So from
um,
Sir Raymond, no? What are the most popular podcast topics based on your observations?
I think there's a lot of business topics. Health and wellness are great. And even well, like I mentioned in the trends before, they had business, health and wellness, news and politics, comedy, and society and culture. So those are like the main topics that people have when it comes to podcasts.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Prior to this one, I made a slight research. I made a YouTube search, and I saw one. She was saying that there's more money into podcasting than YouTube. Do you agree?
Like more money to make, or
Yeah, ad revenues or something.
well, I haven't really. I can't. Well, to be honest, I haven't had any ads on my podcast, so I can't really explain
Ah,
that. Yeah, but I mean, I've seen some like every person's different, right? Like, there's usually a standard as to what the rate is to have ads on your podcast. But if you have a smaller show and it's more targeted to your audience, you can actually charge higher. So it's all different, right? There's standard operations and then there's like non-standard where it's just like very targeted to your niche. So like if you have a podcast about dogs and you have it to your audience is dog lovers, then people might pay more for that because it's more targeted.
and I
But-
was checking your YouTube channel
oh my god,
earlier.
I just started that.
On your 21st subscriber.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just started it last month. Really, I've fallen off a little bit, so I have to get back on that.
So
um,
everyone here should just hit that subscribe button for Machina. And that first video, I was looking at the first video. I did not check the welcome to my YouTube channel, but I checked
oh,
the first video, 3 steps of building self confidence. And uh, I'd like to say that the video was very simple and it was all heart.
oh, thank you.
You
I
you
mean,
should
yeah, I know when it comes to video, I don't really know how to edit, and well, I don't know at all how to edit a video. I really, literally just say what I say and put it up there because if I have to figure out how to edit a video, it'll never come out.
Yeah, and I was people are telling me that the old school blogs or the old school vlogs, they're all no hard edit, no hard effects, just a person and a camera just talking to his audience, just like
Yeah.
that.
And sometimes you don't need the best equipment. You just need the basic equipment to start. Like I remember I was talking to a friend and she's like, a very successful photographer, but when she first started, she just started taking pictures with her iPhone. She didn't even own like a fancy camera. So, you just got to start with what you have, right? I mean, if you can't get $100 mic, then get something that's like half the price or a quarter of the price, and just eventually you can like um make it better along the way, right? Improve it.
Yeah, so you should check out this YouTube channel. I think this is newly made by Mom Sheena. Yeah.
Yeah, it started like 2 months
For us,
ago.
consider me as your 22nd. I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you. It's a lot.
Yeah, I heard this saying from someone. I think she's still here. Content first. The second would be the tool, right,
Yeah.
JP?
Uh, I'm yeah, so because when you're putting out content out there, because I have a YouTube channel myself, and I teach people how to slim down,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's really really very simple. I want to keep it very simple for people because they think when it's about science, they panic. So I just try to keep it simple. I try to keep it basically I'm telling people that you can slim down, and these principles that I've been teaching people can be learned by a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Something like. So the one that you're telling us about podcasting, actually after this live stream, I'm going to go back to the YouTube transmission and write everything down.
Oh wow.
Those will be basically those will be my guidelines for life for doing a podcast. Because tomorrow, Joe Mark and I think, are going to make a podcast ourselves.
Oh, nice. Can't wait
Yeah.
to hear it.
So this whole channel in YouTube, the one in the share screen, I think I'm going to make that into a podcast. Except for the recipes, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of people use their YouTube videos and just convert it as MP3s and edit it a little bit and have it as their podcast episodes. They probably just put an intro and outro and then that's it.
That's a nice idea. I can
Yeah.
do that.
And like it's just easier work for you, right? Because you've already done it, and then it's a great way to cross promote, like to check the video out, go to my YouTube, vice versa. And people do actually do video podcasts, but it is a lot more cost effective, just because some podcast hosting don't even offer video podcasts, and if they do, it costs a lot more because of the bandwidth and how much info you're uploading.
Mm. So if ever we're going to try podcasting, what could be a good platform or a hosting website that you're telling us?
I use Simplecast. I can send you a link to that. That's what I use. It's very simple, has all the stats that you need. Like I can share a screen what it looks like if that helps out.
yep.
Wait, how do I share screen again? One sec.
At the bottom.
Okay. Sorry, this is my first time using this StreamYard. And so
So it
I
says
see
here
it?
it's published to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Okay.
yeah, so this is like the stats. This is what goes behind like
Downloads.
can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just showing you what I have, right? This is just basic like, stats on my podcast. So like all-time downloads is over 1 million. It tells you how many downloads you have for the day for today alone and the last 7 days, how many unique listeners in the last 7 days. And then this is like your last 5 episodes. It gives you a breakdown of the first 7 days it's released. So which is pretty cool. And it shows it again here. This is just a chart of like how many downloads you have over the past 7 days, but you can, you can go drop down and pick, maybe for the month of September, how many downloads was it? For each episode, what's the download number? It's really great to utilize this and just see the numbers. It also shares the top episodes that I've had of all time, the biggest platforms that people are listening from. So like Apple Podcasts is still one of the biggest platforms to put your podcast out. So it's a great platform out there. Sorry, kind of blanked out. But there's some other ones like, Chrome, Podbean, Spotify. And, once Amazon is going to keep on releasing more podcasts, that will be another great platform to use. Also, the time of day, it shows me how many people are listening at the time of day. This is a cool one. It basically shows you like where people are listening, right? There's people from Australia, the Philippines. I don't know where this is, but somewhere in Asia, Europe, Africa, like I mentioned. I've never even heard of that place before, but it's amazing, like, where it can reach, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And like, I'm just as shocked as you guys are because I've never heard of this place before. I don't even know about that, to be honest. Top countries. So I'm going to show you my top countries. US is the top country. Philippines is actually number 5. Like I mentioned, Africa is in like the top 10. So US is still my biggest audience, like because US really does have a huge podcast fan base. And this is some of the stats that I have. This is also a great way to just distribute your content to podcast directories. So here it's like this is what's considered your RRS feed. RSS feed, and this is what you use to send to your podcast directories like Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and then some other ones like Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all these other podcasting. There's so many podcasting directories, but like once you send that RSS feed, that's when everything gets updated. When a person subscribes or when you have a new episode, it just comes out automatically. You don't have to tell them again, like, hey, I got a new episode. It's done automatically once you send that link. So yeah, I can send that link over to Joe Mark, and I can share it with you guys if you want.
Yeah, do you really need a podcast host?
Yeah, you do.
For those who have no $15 for now.
There's some free. I think there's some free ones there, but you have to be careful when it's free because sometimes they can just take it away at any given moment. But this is the most cost effective that I've seen so far because some of them do charge by how much information you upload. And this one is like, you can upload as many as you want for that price. But 15 is probably the cheapest I've seen other than free.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of platforms, the Apple ones, Spotify. You mean the podcast hosting? That's the platform wherein your content, it will be the one who will push your content through Spotify, or
Yeah.
you
So
do that
like, so the one I showed you, the RSS feed. So you send that RSS feed to like Apple, to Spotify, to Google Play. And once they accept it, then your podcast is on the directory. And then once you have a new episode, it automatically gets notified or gets notified by Apple. You don't have to tell them, hey, I have a new episode. Can you upload it for me? It gets done automatically. And then when someone subscribes, you don't have to tell them, hey, I have a new episode. It just they get notified on their phones or on their tablets.
Yep. So unlike YouTube, the analytics, the panel, it varies per podcast hosting service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So
I don't think YouTube tells you like the countries it's in, just mostly about watch time, right? So
YouTube also has an in-depth info. It also tells you what countries.
oh, okay. I haven't checked out YouTube's insights.
That's a nice thing. The one you showed us.
Yeah,
with
it's
the
cool, right?
Oh,
I guess we
okay.
have another question here from Aquino Tomizawa. How much of a time investment would you say podcasting is?
It depends on how many shows you want to put out. Yeah, like if you're doing this for free, it can get time consuming, especially if you don't know how to edit. So I always say podcasting is a labor of love. Like anything you start with, it's going to be frustrating. You want to throw your laptop against the wall, but the more you keep doing it, the better you'll get. Sometimes when I first started, like a 5-minute episode took me like 2 hours to like edit, but that's because I didn't know what I was doing. But as I keep doing it, it was a lot better. But that's why you have to figure out how many episodes do you want to release. Start small. Start with once a month or once every 2 weeks. You don't have to go crazy like I did. Don't follow what I did. I did like 5 episodes a week, which was like Monday to Friday, and yeah, it burned. I had total burnout, and so now I've actually lessened it to once every 2 weeks, just because I have so many episodes out. But I say start small, and if you want to increase it, that's fine. Like I said, it's your show. You get to choose how many episodes you want to release, how long you want the show to be. So yeah.
So
Yep. I'm seeing in LinkedIn. I'm seeing people who has a job title of podcast manager. Any idea what those are?
Yeah, most of them is like helping you to launch your podcast, or maybe some of them will say, "Hey, if you pay me, I'll get you on Apple's news and new and noteworthy," because that's like a good thing when you have a new show and it gets popped up there. So it's just things like that. Just learning, just maybe producing your show or editing your shows. So yeah, that's basically like what a podcast manager does. So just a lot of different things within the podcasting realm.
So basically, it's only Sheena doing all the works, the content behind the scenes, or you have other people helping you out.
I've so far done it by myself just because for me, like, it's like my form of therapy when I edit podcast episodes. Like, I just like hearing the stories, and like it just sometimes for me, it's like if I'm like stressed or whatever, it helps me kind of like dump all my thoughts.
So there is still editing involved.
Oh yeah, there is, but it's not as like crazy as video. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I remember I interviewed a lady who does those BuzzFeed tasty videos. You know, they're like
Mm.
a minute and a half long. And I asked her like, how long does it take you to edit that video? She's like, normal, you know, on a normal like whatever is like 3 days. I'm like, oh wow.
Wow.
3 days for like a video that's like less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. And the video is hardware intensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
But
all.
like podcasting won't take you 3 days. Maybe in the first time if you don't know what you're doing, but the more you keep doing it, it won't take you 3 days unless you have like a 4 hour show.
Okay, shout out to Eloisa Constantino. Yeah, inviting you in the future, Miss Eloisa. Curious to know what does a podcast manager do in depth. Take you have a question.
Yeah. So let's go back to editing. So it's like you're going to interview your guest for like 2 hours, and then you're just going to pick the best commentaries from there.
Yeah, most of them I usually put out the commentaries that they share. Some of it is just like, you know, someone coughs by accident or someone says something by mistake. You want to take that out. Sometimes I take a lot of like the ums out, or like the breathing, like when you're talking about, you know. So just kind of cleaning it up a little bit so that it's smoother. So yeah, and then adding like an intro and an outro to your show. So because like you know it is kind of like a radio show, only it's on a global scale. So yeah,
So I haven't checked out your podcast channel. So what is your first episode?
it's me actually talking about what the show is going to be about. Episode 0.
So that's episode 0. And how about episode 2?
I interviewed a lady from Singapore, I think. Yeah. So it starts out with just me talking about the podcast show, and then everything. Then from 1 to like now, it's like all interviews.
Okay. So what would be your favorite among all those
Oh my
podcasts?
God, I don't know if I have a favorite, but I do have some that really stand out. Like I interviewed a lady who flies an airplane with her feet. She is the first armless pilot because she was born without arms, and she's also half Filipino. Her name's Jessica Cox, so she's the first armless pilot, which I thought was really cool because she does everything with her feet. Um, and you know, it's just a great reminder that you know our circumstances don't define who we are. Like if we want to do something, we can go out and do it. Like even if you know you don't have hands to fly a plane, then you get resourceful and you use your feet. Um, Another one was I interviewed a lady who was born without legs, and I liked her story a lot because she was like, you know, one of the things she wanted to learn was to skateboard, and her only reason why she wanted to skateboard was because she wanted to do it. She didn't have to overthink like, I don't have any legs. How am I going to learn how to skateboard? She just did it, right? And I know as people, we're very great at overthinking. I'm guilty of it. I overthink like there's no tomorrow, but just you know, hearing that is just a great reminder to just go ahead and do it, even if you have no clue how you're going to start it. Another one was I interviewed this lady who is a Christmas song artist. So she just likes to sing and write Christmas songs.
Wow.
And that's not easy, right? Because Christmas comes like 3 months or 2, 3 months out of the year. Unless you're in the Philippines, it's like half the year. But you know, she had to like basically create her own record company so she could like promote herself to be a Christmas song artist. And because of that, she did get a deal in the Philippines because, like I said, it's like 6 months right in the Philippines celebrating Christmas. But it's like if you really want to do something, you're gonna find a way to get it done, right? And it's not always easy because, like, you know, being an entrepreneur or just doing your like, you know, going on your own path is not always easy. You always feel like you're alone. Nobody's here for you. There's no support. It's hard sometimes. You want to cry. You want to give up. You know, like, and I know sometimes social media glamorizes it thinking like, yeah, I got the fancy car and house. Yeah, you did now, but back then you didn't, right? You were struggling. You're maybe stuck in this tiny little room trying to figure out how am I going to get this business to go and start making money, right? Maybe you've ugly cried like 10 days in a row because you don't know what you're doing. But, if people shared more things like that, they can understand like, yeah, entrepreneurship is great. You get to set your own hours, but you also might have to work 24 hours in a day because this is something that's yours, right? It's tough. It sucks. Not everyone will do it, but it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And how about this one, Sheena? Could you share the link to your podcast so we can share it here in the live stream?
Oh yeah. One sec.
Yeah. I'm curious. Where should I make a search? Is it in Spotify or?
You can just go on Google and type out the podcast name, and it'll show up in like so here, I'll share screen and I'll show you what it looks like if you Google my show. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my website is the first one. Then there's Apple, there's YouTube, Stitcher, which is another podcast directory. Simplecast is the podcast hosting I have. It also has its own website that you can do, Spotify, and then these are some just interviews that I've been on. And then, yeah. Like my website, you can just check out the Tao of Self Confidence, and then I'll have all my episodes there, tools and resources. If anyone wants one-on-one coaching, yeah, it's all here.
So it's much better if you're going to make a podcast since you're putting it up on very, very, very many platforms.
Well, I mean, that's how you build the online presence, right? I mean, you get it out as many platforms as you can. Someone is listening. And this is the podcast host that I use. So actually, you can just go on my website and click this, and you can check out the Simplecast hosting. But yeah, I just hear some reviews that I got from people, my Instagram. So yeah, you can just check this website out. You can check out past episodes here. So it'll be like a lot of interviews because I'm at like episode 800 something.
Episode 800. That's a lot.
I told you I was crazy. So yeah.
How long has this podcast been running, this Tao of Self Confidence?
I've had it for 5 years. I started in September 2015. And yeah.
Because I was doing my math, and I think 800 in a span of 5 years is still a lot. That's
Yeah.
still a lot.
Well, because I was doing 5 episodes a week, but I had season breaks in between. So yeah.
So basically, just put it on like a hosting website in Simplecast, and then Simplecast will be the one in charge to go to Apple and Spotify.
You still have to send it to the directories, but the podcast host makes it easier for you to send it to the directories. Yeah.
Oh, I'm seeing one here. So is this in Spotify or what platform is this?
That's from my podcast hosting from Simplecast.
Ah.
If you have your own website, they have the codes to embed it on your own website. Yeah.
If you have like a Sheena Yap Chan fans club, then they have their own website. They can just get the code and upload it on the website, right?
Yeah. I think you can share it. I think if you check on the actual player, there's like a share button, and then it'll have the codes and stuff, and like social media.
So this is a great way to build that online presence. Now I'm seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Ooh.
think about it. Your show could be reaching over 150 countries from around the world, countries you've never even heard or never knew existed. So many different platforms, players. I mean, with like cars, adding like things to make it easier for podcasts to listen to. And I think Google's doing something where you could do voice search. So that's pretty cool. So I guess when they hear your voice, it just pops up on Google. I don't really know how it works. I've just read a little bit about it. And like all these big companies are investing in podcasting, right? Like Spotify, Amazon now because they understand how big it is. But I think the leading one is still Apple because they've been doing it since the beginning.
Yeah, when did you started having uh, a website? Is it
Oh,
on your first year as well, third year?
no, I started in the beginning. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But you don't have to. Like you can use the podcast hosting. It has a website that you like. You can. They have a website provided for you too. Um,
Mm.
in case like if you don't have the money to invest separately to create a website, then you can just use that.
Any recommendations for audio editing software?
I just use Audacity. It's a free software. I've used that from the beginning. But
Yeah,
there's GarageBand, Adobe. But for me, I use Audacity. It's like I said, it's what I've used from the beginning.
So, if all of the viewers, if you would have any question on how to start your own podcast, as Ma'am Sheena taught us that it would be a great way to broadcast your brand, to build your online presence, kindly drop questions below.
uh, because Sheena is more of women empowerment. Just a quick question as well. Any top popular Filipino podcasters aside from you that you know or you can share to us? Who are
Uh,
they? Curious to know.
there's one that interviewed me a while ago. They're called The Big Picture, and so they're based in Cebu. They interview like all these entrepreneurs, Filipino entrepreneurs. Sometimes they do a live show, like they did a live show with Karen Sita because she's from Cebu. I actually got to interview her as well. She's actually a very smart woman, very very like analytical. Like it's amazing. That's why she's so popular because she's very good at what she does. Um, Other than that, there's like a podcast PH group on Facebook, and then there's a lot of Filipino hosted podcasts there. So I think if you look at like podcast PH or something, you can check out some more Filipino podcasts.
Yep. And a while ago you mentioned about pre-prod,
Sorry?
meaning it already happened. How about live ones? Do you have a
I've, ne-
podcast?
I've never done live podcasts yet, just because technically I haven't been there yet. So I still like doing the regular podcasts, like just pre-recording and putting it out there. But there are a lot of people who've done it. I just haven't gotten into it.
Okay,
So,
okay.
this is a sample of your live podcast.
Kind of, yeah.
So, I have another question. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
If you're going to have like a podcast and then have a guest, is it required that you send the material to them before you post it online?
Uh,
Or
I mean, I do it because it helps them out, right?
mm,
It just helps them prep for the interview and know what to talk about. Some people are just do it freestyle. They tell them ahead of time. I don't really have a set of questions. It's just going to be very conversational. So it's really up to you how you want to do it, right? Like there's no real standard, and I think podcasting just helps you realize, like, helps you make your own decisions a lot more. Because like I know we second guess because like we've been brought up to like just follow what our parents tell us to do. So it's like making a decision's like really like a big thing. But with podcasting, it's like, yeah, do I want to send a transcript to them? Do I want to send them a list of questions? For me, I do it just because it's easier. It's just easier as for content layout.
Okay.
right, so we have a shout out here from Flor de Lisa,
Oh,
Shena Karulasan, watching from Alabang.
hi.
So if you have any questions about podcasting, this is the best time to drop them. And so we can read, and Miss Sheena, our resource person, could answer them.
I, okay.
So we have our wheel.
Oh.
Very, very few registered in the form.
So I might try this podcasting. So, apart from your podcast, Nishina, is there like an online guide where I can read the basics of podcasting?
I mean, you can Google podcasting, and there's lots of videos on it. I also have a course on how to set up your own podcast because a lot of people like the idea of podcasting but don't know how to start or where to start or how to even set it up. So I decided to create an online course for it just because so many people were asking me at the time.
I think you
Yeah,
should.
yeah, and I also have a free ebook on why I use podcasts for why I use podcasts to market your business. So it's all on the website. I see someone, RJ, what proper equipment, like I mentioned, have a good mic. If you can't afford a good mic, just have a USB mic so that your sound is more clear and podcast hosting. So,
So those are just the two main things that you'll need to start.
like to invest in, like Audacity, you can use, it's a free software. Zoom, it's free if it's under a certain amount of time. Um, and even Audacity, you can, if you're not interviewing, you can just use that to record your voice.
Yeah, in a computer or a laptop to edit.
Yeah, computer or laptop. Or sometimes no, you can use your phone and just record it. I just don't know how you would edit it on a phone, but a lot of people sometimes just use their phone. You can buy a mic for your phone and just start talking.
Correct.
Okay, last chance for asking questions. We have viewers, but few registered for our giveaway. So the lucky winners will get to have 3 months subscription to Career Premium and LinkedIn Learning. Okay? So the first winner for tonight. So while we're doing this, last chance for you to ask questions to Sheena. Okay, so our first winner is Akino Tomizawa. If you're still there, please comment down below. First winner, say it was your first winner. And once more, last chance for you to ask questions to Miss Sheena.
Yeah.
And our second winner is Esther De Luna. Okay, congratulations to.
Congratulations, guys. Um, we have another question from Sir RJ Felias.
Okay.
Is Boya by MM1 good for podcasting?
I've never heard of that, so
I'm
sorry.
sorry, never heard of
Because that's the mic I'm using right now.
Is Boya MM1 a lavalier or sort of shotgun mic?
It's a directional mic. I have it here.
I mean, my mic is called the Audio Tech, so it's like the ATR 2100, and I've used this since the beginning. Some people use a Yeti. I know not everyone can afford a Yeti because it's pretty pricey. That's why I got this too, because at the time I was like, the Yeti's too much.
For RG Felias, yes, you can use shotgun mic if that is what you currently have. Yeah, I understand. Sheena, Boya is popular here in the Philippines, not in Canada.
It's like a
Yeah,
shotgun mic, that one.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, you start with what you have, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
like if you can't afford a mic, like, like a Yeti or whatever, start with what you have. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? If you keep waiting for perfection, you'll never get anything out.
I have to agree with that. But if you're not aiming for perfection, just aim for a clear voice.
Yeah, that's all. As long as it's,
Every
for
time
me, as
you
long as you can hear the words.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I see. That's how I test mine. If I can hear myself talk and I can hear the other person talk, then it's good. That's it.
Yeah, once more, RG, it's Okay, and anyways, you'll also be doing pre-prod, right? So you can boost that app. You can make it more sparkle through your audio editing software, unless you're into live podcasting. Yeah, that will do. Wants more content. First, second is the tool.
My mom, Janet Kahukong.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I think that's it. Once more, if you know someone who has a message or advocacy to share, then we invite you to be our next sharer, like our dearest Miss Sheena Yap Chan for our next episode of LinkedIn Local Philippines Live. Once more, thank you, Miss Sheena, for joining us. It's an honor. I felt the same way, like what you said a while ago about inviting someone. At first, it was suntok sa buwan as well, not knowing that you'll be accepting our invitation. So,
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, no,
thank you so
salamat. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
dagang salamat. Ayan, Sir
So do follow. Since Machina was telling, don't forget to self promote every time. Do follow Ma'am Sheena Yap Chan's YouTube channel, her podcasts.
Yeah, and if you're on LinkedIn, feel free to send a message. Yeah,
I am the 21st subscriber on her YouTube channel, be it the 22nd, the 23rd, and even the million subscriber.
thank you. Salamat.
I'm the 22nd. Anyways, Sheena, thank you once more, and hoping we can invite you probably next year or in the near future as we celebrate with you your 2 million downloads.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Mhm.
you.
Bye, everyone.